Welcome back, everyone. In this video, our goal is to create a brand new landscape, which means we don't want to be in this third-person example map. We want to start with a fresh map, and the way we can do that is by coming under the File menu. Let's do New Level. Control+N is a hotkey on how to get here. And when you click on that, you'll see that you've got 4 different new level options. This time of day one being the newest one. It's kind of cool. We're actually going to choose this one. And they actually have, as given by this tip right here, some new controls for how to control and set your sun in here. And I'm not going to get too in-depth with that now, but I'll just give you a quick preview because I know you're just aching to know. Holding down Control and the L key, then moving will bring on that little previewer that you see there. And then if you move your mouse left and right, you're actually changing the position of the sun. Up and down is also changing the position of the sun. So there it is. So that light blue arrow is kind of showing the angle of the sun within our little dome-shaped previewer there. So that's pretty cool. But anyways, back on topic. Let's create a brand new landscape. And we're going to start off by deleting this guy. We're going to delete out this actor. Select that, hit the delete key. Select this text render actor. We're going to hit the delete key because we don't need it. Now, the way to create a brand new landscape is we're going to come under our landscape tab up here in the modes panel. Shift+3 is the hotkey if you like using hotkeys. I'm going to click on this, and when you do, you're going to see a giant green grid fill up your world here. Well, not the entire world, but a large portion of it. I am using the WASD keys to kind of fly around like this while I have the right mouse button down. So you're going to notice a bunch of squares here, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit. But first, let's go over some of our settings that we want here. We have Enable Edit Layers. Now, layers in landscapes is something new as a version 4.24. We're not going to talk about them in depth here, but they are going to come into play in the future videos. So let's make sure we've got this checkbox ticked. Material, I had this material slotted in by default in a prior trial before I actually recorded this video. So I would recommend that you find M_ground grass as just a sort of preview material. We're eventually going to create our own and apply it, but this ground grass is going to give us something kind of natural to work with. We are then going to talk about some of these settings down here. Now we've got location and rotation and scale settings. Note that you can actually hard set some locational settings here. So if you wanted to set your X location here to, I don't know, 5,000 and then hit enter, notice how my preview kind of shot down in the X direction, the red direction right there. But you can also actually go in your preview window here and move it around by dragging around these arrows. I'm going to set these back all to 0 for the time being. Let's see, as far as rotation goes, there's some things to know about this, and that you are kind of restricted in how you're rotating this. If you try setting a rotation in the X value, you can't do it. The Y value, you can't actually do it. I tried punching in 45, hitting enter, nothing happened. But the Z value, I can. So I'm just actually left clicking right here and moving left and right to kind of change the value. So you can change it in the Z axis here. Also, if I just reset this, I can press the space bar within my preview window here, and you can see that it only allows me to rotate it around the Z axis. So that's a little restriction here until you actually create the landscape for the time being. Let me set that back to 0. These scale settings, these you are allowed to change either in here, hard setting them, or within your preview window. So I could set my X scale to be 50, but notice that when I hit enter here, it's going to change my Y along with it. Likewise, if I change my Y value, I'll change it back to 100. It's going to change my X along with it. The Z value here, I could change this to something like 10, but it doesn't really matter because Z for a landscape is your up and down, and right now we're just creating this large swath of X and Y land. Okay, I'm going to set this all back as is for the time being. Next up, let's talk about some of these settings down here. We've got section size, section per component, and number of components. These are actually our different squares that we see out here. Let me just go into unlit mode for just a moment here so I can turn our screen black. It's going to make it a little bit easier to see our green lines here. So let's talk about what we got. And I'm going to set my section size here to 7 by 7. My sections per component I'm going to set to be 2 by 2. And our number of components is going to be 8 by 8. So what have we got here? Our number of components, 8 by 8, that is these larger squares that I'm kind of trying to outline right now with my mouse cursor. You can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we've got 8 this direction as well. Now these 2 by 2 sections, these are a little bit tougher to see, but you see how each one of these components has 1, 2 squares within it, and then 1, 2 squares within it. So these sections per component, these are our components again, are how many different sections in a single component. 1, 2, 1, 2. Probably a little bit easier to see on some of these upper ones. Pretty faint lines between those. And now these 7 by 7 quads are how many squares within a given section. So if I try to zoom up in on one of these. Okay, again, this is a component. This is a section of the component. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you can count 7 down here as well, quads within that section. So that's how all of these squares are divvied up. Now, what does this have to do with anything? These different section sizes, sections per components? Well, there's a lot of technical reasons behind all this. I won't bore you with the details for now, but section size has to do with things like landscape, LODing, and culling. If you really want to read more about that, little nighttime reading for you, I will direct you to the landscape technical guide that you can find at this address in the Epic Games Unreal Engine 4 documentation. I'm going to come back to this recommended landscape size in just a bit, but it's talking about some sections per component, component sizes, etc. That's all included in there as well. I'll come back to this in just a moment. Okay, something else that you may have noticed here if you're really astute, our number of components, which is 8 by 8, that is also the total number of components listed down here. So you can see that this is a grayed out parameter. It just simply multiplies these two. That's how this comes about. Our overall resolution, what is that? 113 by 113. That is the number of vertices our landscape is using. Vertices, what is that? Well, that is essentially these intersection points that you find in this preview grid. So there's a vertice right there, there's another one, etc. So there should be 113 up and 113 across if we were to count them all, which I will not do so right now. Now, something to note here is you can actually hard set your overall resolution here. I'm just going to put in 200 by, let's try 200, and as I hit enter, you may have noticed something, that my number of components is automatically updated to 14 by 14. My overall resolution changed back to 197 to 197, not 200 by 200. And my actual landscape previewer here has grown in size as well because I've now bumped it up to 14 by 14 components because I changed my resolution. Now what's going on? Why didn't it keep 200 by 200? Well, remember, it has to calculate our overall resolution by figuring out how many components, how many sections per component, and then our section size, how many quads. And when the math all works itself out, it will get as close to your 200 by 200 resolution as you put in, which is 197 by 197 in this case. Now let's talk about this fill world button we've got down here. If you click on this guy, you will notice that your landscape previewer here has grown in size prior to what we currently had, and you've got a rather large looking landscape. We got 32 by 32 components when you click on this fill world button. That's pretty big, but it's not as big as you can actually make. If you were to set your section size here to 255 by 255 and left the rest the same, it'll automatically update our number of components to 16 by 16. You'll notice that we have created one giant landscape. Now, you can actually create open worlds in a much better way than creating one giant swath of landscape like this. That'll be something we discuss way down the road when we talk about world composition, but just showing you that you can create a giant landscape right from the get-go. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and put in our real settings for the time being, what we really want. So I'm going to set our section size here to 63 by 63. Sections per component we'll leave at 2 by 2. Number of components we will change to 4 by 4. And notice right now I've got 4 by 16. That is legal. You can do that if you want to do something like that, but I'm going to go 4 by 4 to get a square shape. That's going to give us an overall resolution of 505 by 505, and I'm going to go ahead and click Create. Now, our landscape, this is our landscape actor. You can see that in the world outliner right here. We've got a landscape actor, and you can see it's got our M ground grass landscape material already applied to it. And you'll notice it looks rather flat looking right now because we are currently in unlit mode. Let's jump on out of there and go back to lit mode. And if your sky is looking kind of weird like that, remember you can hold down the Control and L key, and then moving your mouse button around, you can change the direction of your sun. Where is my sun? Somewhere beyond the horizon out there, but I will set it. Let's go bring it around. There it is. That's looking pretty nice. So we've got ourselves a brand new landscape which has no undulations, no sculpting done. But let's go ahead and save our landscape. And before we even do that, let's create some new folders. Under our content folder here, go ahead and left click on that. Then we'll right click. We'll create a new folder. And we'll call this Landscapes. And you know what? I'm going to color it green right away by right clicking on it, setting the color. Let's go a straight green color. I'm going to set G to be 1, R to be 0, like so. And I'm going to click OK. That'll just make it stand out in our content browser. And then I'm going to right click on our Landscapes folder. We're going to create a new folder and call this Maps. And we're going to want to save our map inside here. So right now we've got an untitled map. We could simply click here to save our current map. It's going to ask us where we want to save it. Let's navigate down to our maps folder, and I'm just going to call this map_01. Sounds like a fine name to me. Let's go ahead and click and save this. So we've got our new map, and you should have two assets that show up down here, this map file and this map build data registry. That's what you're looking for. And now one more thing before we close out this video. Again, I just want to point you to the Landscape Technical Guide on the Unreal Engine 4 documentation. Here are some recommended landscape sizes in terms of sections per component, component size, total components, etc. So if you're looking to create your brand new landscape, consider one of these sizes because it will be pretty performant based on Unreal's recommendations. Guys, that will do it all for this one. We will see you in the next video.